Awesome. I am excited to introduce our next guest. Here we are at the Fearless Entrepreneur Summit. Hopefully you've been learning a lot, taking great notes, and most importantly, implementing. That's really, really key to having success, is to implement the things that you learn, the things that you take away. We're talking about time, managing our time, because if you manage your time, you manage your life, instead of letting the time manage you. You want to manage your time. And we had a talk yesterday about that. Manage your day, or that your day will manage you. So go ahead and go listen to that one. But our next speaker today is Whitney Wiley, and I love her topic because this is something that, oh my gosh, growing up as a people pleaser myself for many, many, many decades, that this one word is a word that was really hard for me to say, and that's the word no, which I understand means next opportunity. That's like how to translate it. But Whitney is going to be talking about how to why no should be your favorite word. And I met Whitney a couple years ago. I think it was through the One Habit book series. We were both in a One Habit book together, and Whitney interviews the authors in the One Habit books. And so I had this opportunity to meet her. And then that just really took off, because the book we were doing was called One Habit for Women Action Takers. I was the one that was heading up the book, and Whitney was interviewing everybody. So on the launch day, I stayed on with her, and, stayed with her for the interviews the whole day. And so I really got to know her really well. And Whitney, super excited to have you, come and share with us how we can use the word no, and why it should be our most favoritist word in the whole entire world.
The most favoritist word ever, right? Yeah. Thank you, Linda. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Happy to share what I know about saying no, and why we need to say no, why it's important that we actually say no. And, it's interesting, when I decided to launch a business and left my last job, I had these visions of controlling my time, and I could do whatever I want when I want. And I imagine for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's, one of the appeals. And then you find yourself working more, harder than you did when you had a job, right? And while what you're doing, you may love in a way you didn't love your last job, you don't have the freedom and flexibility that you thought you were going to have. And so what I have learned over the course of the past few years is that at some point, you have to say no to some things. And you have to say no to some really good things. And it's not that they're bad, it's just that they're not the things that are great, that are going to take you where you want to go. And so we're going to explore that, and what the difference is, and how you can actually say no so that you can say yes to what's really important. So, you probably, I'm going to move my chair here. You probably spent years looking forward, like I said, to that day when you launched your business and you could just be in charge of your own time. So one of the things that I keep in mind is really that time is an illusion. And you're probably like, what does that mean? Time really doesn't exist. And it's a construct that we have put on, humans have put on what is just sort of naturally flowing and moving through, so that we can control we can control the activities and when we do them. But really, stuff just sort of flows in and out. And all there is really this moment right here, right? The past is gone, the future hasn't come yet. And so is just right here in this moment. And so it becomes a matter of how do you maximize what's happening in this moment? How can you structure things so that you are most efficient and most effective in this moment? And the way to do that is to get rid of those things that are not of absolute import to get done right here in this moment, right? So in this moment, it's not important for me to do laundry. It's not important for me to do the dishes. It's not important for me to be doing anything else other than what I'm doing right here, right now, which is talking to you. Nothing else matters except this. And when we can get to the point where we understand that and accept that, all the other stuff sort of just takes a back seat. So I am a believer that it's less about time management than it is about boundary management. And when we learn to create and protect our boundaries, the time pieces really take care of themselves. So I learned this, as most of us learn our lessons, through experience. And there was a time when time didn't mean anything, right? I had all the time in the world because I didn't have a lot of competing interests. As a high school student, even into college, the first time around when I was in college, I didn't have a lot of competing interests. I was a student, and my job, so to speak, was to go to school. And when I wasn't in school, once I was old enough, the probably only real competing interest was boyfriends. And then you add a job. And then you move on and you add family. And then you move on and you add whatever it is you add. And that's where it starts to matter. And I found myself, after being married, divorced, single mother, split custody with my ex-husband, with our son, needing to change my life so that I could improve the quality of my life and the home that I was providing for my son. And I decided to go back to school. So at the time I was married, when I first met my first husband, I was in college and I didn't finish. We ended up getting married, we got pregnant, and then we got divorced. And in the midst of all of that, school took a back seat. So when I ended up being single with a child who was a toddler at the time, I'm trying to figure out how to move my life forward, how to pick up the pieces and move my life forward. And there came a point in time, and I'm cut to the chase here, there came a point in time where I made a decision to go back to school. And I had this divine appointment, this conversation in the office where I was working at the time with someone who came in and said, he was talking about going to law school. And I said, there was a time I wanted to be a lawyer, and, that's not going to happen. I don't have a bachelor's degree. So, that's not going to happen. And he said, well, you don't need a bachelor's degree in California to go to law school. Long story short, I went to law school. I applied, got in, and I started making these decisions that I needed to make some decisions in order to maximize the resources that I had available to me, my time. And the competing interests at that point were, I was already had split time with my son. I was working full time, and now was adding law school on top of that. I was dating. I had friends. I spent a lot of time on Sundays and Monday nights watching football. So I had all these things going on in my life, and I had to make some decisions. And what it boils down to, this boundary management, is that choices and sacrifices, or trade-offs, as I prefer to call them. Everything is about choices and trade-offs. And so I had to make some decisions. What was going to go in order to bring this new thing, law school, into my life? And you understand, when you're making decisions, it's not just about what you do, but why you do it. And the why behind going to law school was about providing a better life for me and my son, to give him an example of a mother who didn't just lay down and give up when things didn't go the way she had envisioned with a life with his father. So I'm in school. I get accepted to school, and now I have these decisions that I have to make about how I'm going to move forward. And I started working through the list of, again, priorities. So I had this vision for my life and what I wanted it to look like. Law school was a part of that. I was going to become an education lobbyist after law school was over. So I had this vision for my life, and I started looking at my values and priorities, the things that were really important to me. And nothing was more important to me than making sure I provided a home, a stable home for my son. And so I had to make these decisions, and the things that were jettisoned were things that would distract me either from law school or my son. And I had to decide how I was going to structure my time in order to maximize what I had available in order to be the best mom possible and to be the best law student possible, because it became, it was a financial imperative that I do well in school, because the top 3 students in the school got their tuition paid for, either 100%, 50%, or like 25%. And the moment I found that, I was like, I can actually go to law school and it won't cost me anything, but I've got to be 1, 2, or 3 in a student in my class. And so how was I going to do that? Again, choices and trade-offs. So my son was the most important thing to me. School became second, and everything else had to revolve around that, which meant all the time that I had spent at Monday Night Football, all day Sunday brunch footballs, had to go. Right? Those, and it was fun. But once I decided what was most important, it had to go. So the things that ultimately you have to say no to are things that are distracting you from where you want to go. The default activities of your life, and I'll talk a little bit about that more, default activities, habits. And then the third, so you've got distractions, the default habits, and then things that destroy, and as it relates to your business, either destroys your brand or destroys your relationships. And so the 3 Ds are what I want to leave you with. Do not, or you have to eliminate distractions, defaults, and things that destroy, the things that are destructive in your life. So how do you get to that point? So it starts here. It starts with your vision, right? You have a vision for your life, and you go through a process of actually doing that. And you probably have done that to some degree when you started your business, or as you are gearing up to start your business or to grow your business. You work through a process of asking questions about what it is you want, why it's important, and what does it look like? right? So for me, the life that I was envisioning at that time is not the life that I envision now. And what I decided a few years ago, when I moved from having a job to working for myself, I started with a vision of what that looked like. It would be days where I got up, I had my quiet time, I would work, and then I would end my days early and spend my evenings with my husband. So I've moved on. I have a second husband. We don't have any children in the house. And so I'm envisioning all this fun. And what I found that I hadn't really anticipated, which is really interesting because I'd gone through the whole experience at law school and getting really clear. And I was able to, my routine, my daily routine was so tight and so specific. You would have thought that when I started my own business and lost control, I would have remembered that right off the bat, but it took a little while. And then I remembered, oh, you've got to go back to your boundaries. You've got to go back to the basics in order to figure out what you need to say no to. So if it doesn't move your vision forward, that's something you're going to say no to. But in order to know what that is, you've got to have a vision, got to get really clear on that. And the gift that I have provided is called The Magic of No. It's an ebook. It's an opportunity, it walks you through how to come up with your vision of your life and how work fits into that, and how to identify your values and your priorities. Because once you get those things, your vision, your values, your priorities, you can put the boundaries around those things so that if it doesn't move those things forward, if it conflicts with those are the things that you're going to be saying no to. And so once you figure that out, you're saying no again to the 3 Ds, right? So distractions, let's talk about distractions. There are a couple of things that you need to understand. We get distracted by external things, but we're also distracted by internal things that we probably don't really stop to think about why those distractions are there. So it's easy to identify when you're in the middle of doing some work and someone comes, your husband, your wife, your kids, a colleague, someone comes in and interrupts your flow, right? That's an easy distraction to identify. But we also create our own distractions, things that delay us from doing things maybe we don't want to do, things that are uncomfortable to do, things that we don't like to do. Maybe making phone calls. Every time you need to sit down and make phone calls, all of a sudden you remember that the dishes need to be done or the laundry, and you haven't adopted Monica's DOT system yet, right? And so you get distracted by those things. Is it really those things, those activities that are out there, or is there something else, something inside of you that you need to stop and think about? What do you get out of? And this is something that I always find really informative, is to get curious about why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And if you'll do that, why every time you're supposed to make phone calls, do you remember all the things on this laundry list of things that you could be doing instead? You are getting a positive benefit from that. And if you will stop and think about what that positive benefit is, even though you're getting it in a negative way, you can then take a step back and ask yourself, is there another way for me to get the same positive benefit? When that happens to me, what I tend to find is that I need a break. And I know a couple of speakers have talked about self-care. And if you find yourself constantly being distracted, it may simply mean that it's a signal, it's a message to you that you need to take care of yourself in a way that you're not doing. And so the distraction, if you just say no to the distraction, you can move on. But if you address the issue underlying the distraction, right, you'll actually free yourself from the distraction. So there's a two-part process in there. You have to say no. You can't let those things keep you from moving towards your vision, towards your goal. At the same time, you've got to get to the bottom line of why the distractions keep happening, particularly if they're the same distractions over and over again. Default. So the habits. This is about getting in touch with, getting real with, honest with yourself about the habits that you have that you're not thinking about, right? So habits are our brain's way of helping us to be efficient and effective doing things that we do over and over again. And habits in and of themselves are not bad. There's nothing wrong with having habits or default actions or activities. But if you're doing them without thinking about it, if you're not intentional about why you're doing them, you'll find yourself doing things just because you've done them. And football was one of those things. It was every Sunday, my sister and I, we would get up at the crack of dawn. I would watch the sports reporters, and then we would head off to our favorite location. It was a watering hole where we went, everybody gathered every Sunday and Monday night, brunch, drinking, a champagne brunches, eating all day Sunday and then Monday night. And it just became a habit. It was something we just did without ever stopping to think about, why are we continuing to do this? Until I went to law school and I had to reassess that. So if you have habits, that things that you're doing just because you've always done them, and you notice that the activity is not moving you towards your goal, you've got to stop and ask some questions. Get curious about those habits, about those default actions, and then make an intentional decision about letting it go or finding another way to get that done if it's something that you actually need to be doing. And then the third D is things that destroy your brand or are destructive to your relationships. You have to say no to those things, right? So in building a business, you've got a brand. Everyone's got a brand. Yeah, or even if you don't have a business, you have a brand. People see you, they know you, they recognize you for whatever it is that you're known for, right? Rock star, self-care rock star, right? Linda, collaborator, known as a collaborator. She doesn't want to do anything that would destroy her brand as being a great collaborator. So she's got to look at the activities that she's doing, the choices that she's making in order to say, no, I'm not going to do that because it destroys my brand. It would ruin my relationship with the people that I'm collaborating with. And so you've got to stop and make assessments of that. My thing is about helping people to love the work that they're doing and to create environments where great work happens. And if am out doing things that contradict that message, that brand, is going to create a problem for me. So I have to say no to those things. So why? If you're not moving towards your vision, you're not moving towards the life that you want. And in the end, all of the things that we're doing really is to help us to have the life that we want. And so you've got to look at how you're saying no, or whether or not you're saying no. And if you are not saying no, if you don't have boundaries around your values, your priorities, and the vision that you have for your life and your business, you have to reevaluate that. So why don't you say no? Take some time to think about that. And in the ebook, there's an opportunity, some questions for you to sit and ponder about why you don't. A lot of the reasons that we don't say no, and Linda mentioned this in the introduction, is that we're people pleasing. We don't want people to think that we're mean or bad or that we're not a team player. And so we end up saying yes to things that are not serving us. And it's not that things are good or bad. Just reframe that. Is it serving me or is it not serving me? Is it serving my vision for my life or not serving me? Is it contradicting with my values or not? Is it preventing me from honoring my priorities or not? It's not a matter of good or bad. It's not a matter of you being good or bad. It's a matter of you moving your life, your vision, your goals forward, moving your business forward. And if it's not doing that, you should be saying no. So how can you do a couple of things? I want to give you some practical things to walk away with. First of all, you want to reframe how you view boundaries. A lot of people see boundaries as being restrictive. And it's not about restricting you, it's about protecting you, which in turn actually gives you freedom, right? Because now you don't have to think about the things that you need to say no to. You've created a safe place for the things that are most important to you. So it actually gives you freedom, and you can do everything that you want within the boundaries of your values, your vision, and your priorities. And ultimately, it helps you to stress less, which goes back to self-care. And it helps you to reduce need to have feelings of guilt about things that you're saying no to. There's no reason to feel guilty about saying no to something that is not serving you. There are times when you'll have competing priorities. You'll just have to make a decision of what's best in the moment, right? You do the best you can with the options that you have in any given moment, and then let the rest of it go. The boundaries give you space to do the things that you need to do. And the most important person that has to honor your boundaries is you. You send a clear message to the world, to other people, about whether your boundaries are really important or not by whether or not you honor them. And when you honor your boundaries, other people will honor your boundaries. So there have been some strategies that have been talked about. I was able to listen to a couple of the speakers yesterday. Color coding, time blocking, I use those, absolutely important. Monica's DOT system, right? It was delegate, outsource, technology, and the S is going to escape me at the moment. But that system that she's talking about, I thought it was excellent. I hadn't put it in those terms, but you can't get there until you know what it is that you want and what you're moving towards. And so the time that you spend actually figuring that out will help to serve you in implementing all the strategies, using all the tools that have been talked about in this summit. Let's see, make sure. Oh, how to say no. How do you actually say no? The easy answer is no, right? You can use other words. You can use other phrases. You can say, no, thank you. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't do that right now, or any number of other variations on that. What I would caution you about, though, is saying maybe if you don't want to do it, or it is one of the three areas that, is the default distraction or something that destroys your brand or your relationships, not to say maybe. You do not want to give anyone hope that they can ask you again. If your answer really is no, if you're saying maybe just to get someone to leave you alone, know that they're not going to leave you alone. You've said maybe, they're going to come back and come back. If you say no, that's the end of it, right? You can say, I'm going to have to pass. I'm not comfortable with that. You could say, I don't want to say no, but I have to. Now, right? It's not, this is not for me. And know this, that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe explanations. You can if you want, but you don't owe anyone any explanations. And so I would counsel against doing that. So you may not have time to do all the things, right? And we get to a place where we're trying to do so much. I say may not have time. You don't have time to do all the things, but you do have more than enough time to do the most important things. And the way you do that is a couple of things, is know what those most important things are. And then the other thing is to remind yourself daily that you do actually have time to do those things. Not the things that don't serve you, not the things that are not in your best interest, for your best and highest and those that you are impacting. But you may have to tell yourself that every single day. And I do that. I tell myself every day, I have enough time to do all the things that are the most important things, and all the other stuff I can put on the sideline. So you can create that time by how you start your day, how you end your day, with morning routines that set you up by using the tools that have been talked about here in terms of time blocking and color coding, taking care of yourself. All of those things help you to create time if you put the time in intentionally on the front end. You get back what you need on the back end. So I want to wrap this up by saying, embrace your inner 2-year-old, learn to say no, and say it often, because when you say no to those things that don't serve you, even if they are good things, it allows you to say yes to the great things that move you and your vision forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Let's hear it for Whitney. We have a virtual, what do you call it? applause. So, Whitney, thank you so much. That was fabulous. I got some really good notes from here. Want to ask if anybody has any questions about, maybe you have a question like, I have this kind of situation and I'm not really sure how to say no, or this situation keeps showing up and I'm not really sure how to say no. So I say yes, and then I regret it, right? Because oftentimes, I don't know about you ladies, but as a reformed people pleaser, I spent a lot of my years saying yes to things I had no business saying yes to,
Yeah.
because I wanted the person to like me. There was something you said here that I'm going to do a like what we call a plus on it, CEO space, a CEO space member. And one of the things that they taught me is to say a phrase like this: I appreciate you thinking of me, but this isn't of interest. I will scout for you. So this is where the collaboration part comes in for me. Like, I'm all about collaboration. And so what this taught me is that as if I learn what somebody's doing, what they're asking of me, then if I hear somebody else who's looking for that or wants to be part of that, I connect the two together. So instead of me just saying, I love the word no, I think it's a great word, but I also want to help if I can, and if it works. So that one phrase right there, like, for me that has worked is like, either this isn't of interest, or I'll use this one, it's not in alignment with what I'm working on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just had that situation happen the other day. Someone reached out to me about Pampered Chefs. And I'm like, first of all, it's one of those things that's not in my brand, not work brand, but my personal life brand. I'm not a chef. I'm not in the kitchen. I don't do gadgets. So for me to throw an event for something that is out of alignment with who people know me to be, I was like, it doesn't make sense. And I did exactly what you said. I was like, well, that's not for me, but I know someone who's really into that. If you'd like, I'm willing to ask her if she would be interested. And she's like, very grateful that I offered that. I said no about me, but that I offered. And I agree with you, Linda, as long as that is something that you want to do and it works for you, then making that offer or find, and there are lots of different ways you can say no, right? It doesn't have to be no, it doesn't have to be mean, it doesn't have to be, angry or any of those things. It just has to be in alignment with who you are and what you're moving towards. And how you say it ultimately depends on your personality. The one thing, again, don't make it be wishy-washy about it, or maybe, if that's not where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think maybe is probably one of the worst words. Because it just sits you on the fence, and here you are like, I want to say no, but I want to say maybe because for them, right? I'm saying maybe,
right? Because it's easier, right? It's easier in the moment to say maybe because it doesn't create conflict or an uncomfortable conversation. You're just delaying the uncomfortableness. And then you've got someone who's harassing you or hounding you, trying to convince you. And it's like, well, if I just said no, we would have ended this 2 months ago.
Yeah. And oftentimes there's a question, could you say the whole sentence again? I think Denise, you were referring to, I said, I appreciate you thinking of me. And I think this is an important piece here, because you said the same thing, Whitney, right? I appreciate you thinking of me, because it's validating their thoughts of you and saying, thank you so much. You thought of me. I was top of mind. Yes. Unless it's somebody who's just doing cut and paste it to everybody, the whole world. Sometimes we can tell when that's happening. Hey, I do that sometimes too for my events, right? So it's just easier to send the same message. But I appreciate you thinking of me. This isn't of interest, but I'll scout for you.
Yes.
And all this does is this tells them no. So they're not going to ask you again. They may, but they're less likely to ask you again. They respect you because you told them no. Really, when we say no to people, depending on the languaging that we use, they're appreciative. Yes. Most of the time I hear people say, thank you so much for telling me that. you know, and so by telling them no, it really opens up that door for you standing up for yourself, your own boundaries. You have set the boundaries and you're following your boundaries. And just like Whitney said, we teach people how to treat us. And so if I set up a boundary, and then, think about your kids. How many times do you tell your kids, if you do that one more time, I'm gonna ABC, right? And they do it one more time and you're like, I told you not to do that. If you do that one more, right? So what you're doing is you're teaching them to push the boundaries. Just like kids, entrepreneurs are the same. Like we're like those 2-year-olds. So let me see here.
And ultimately, the whole point of this is so that you can be freed up to do what you're doing, right? To reach to do your purpose, to build your business, grow your business. And so all of the energy that you're spending on things that are not serving you, or is energy you're not, and time you're not spending doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you want to say yes to.
Yeah, say yes to you. You're not saying no to them. You're saying yes to you.
Yeah, you're saying yes to you. Absolutely.
Yes to your purpose. Yes to living your purpose. When you know your purpose, I truly believe that once we know our purpose, it's our job and duty to live on purpose for the rest of our life. Like I'm living on purpose, that quote unquote, instead of on accident, like I did for most years. And if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand if you want to ask, or you can ask them in the chat. What was the tip about getting in the mood to make calls?
So it wasn't so much about getting in the mood to make calls as it is, if making calls is creating an angst for you, which it does for lots of people, right? You don't want to make calls. So you're using other things as a distraction from taking the time to make the calls. What I was saying is that you need to understand what you're getting out of this other thing. So if what you get out of paying attention to the laundry all of a sudden, because you don't want to make calls, there's a fear or an uncomfortableness there that you've got to get a hold of. You've got to do some exploration around that. And if it's fear of making phone calls, then you've just got to make the phone calls, right? And a lot of people don't like that. So that was the point there.
And I'll share my tip on that, because breaking through fears is my jam. I'm preparing my TED talk about breaking through fears, and so related to that, the phone call thing, I did share earlier in my talk about how phone calls terrified me, absolutely terrified me. So I just didn't do them. So what I did instead is I tapped in and I said, why am I scared to make the calls? And as I look back through my me, I said, oh my gosh, it's because I'm so scared of them saying no, like they don't want to buy what I have, or I'm scared of judgment that may come about. Misty talked about judgment earlier. The fear of judgment is the number one fear. They say that more people are scared of speaking on stage than they are of dying. The reality is more people are scared of the judgment they will receive on stage. It's not speaking on stage, because you can get up on stage all day long if it's something that you're not really worried about, but your fear of the judgment that you're going to get. Okay, so what I realized is, for me, it was that fear of, I wouldn't even pick up the phone to dial. Like I didn't even want to, I had a fear of dialing, right? So I realized it was that fear of dialing, because what if they pick up the phone and then I actually get them? What if they actually talk to me? Or what if they don't pick up the phone, it goes to voicemail, and I leave a voicemail message and I leave a stupid voicemail message? This is what was going through my head. So what I did instead is, instead of thinking of this as a call for a sales call, mine are all connection calls or collaboration calls. How can we collaborate with each other? That all of my calls are all about that. So it's me getting to know them as a person, and then during the call, I'm like, you know what? I think this is this person might be a good fit for one of my books, because I'm doing book publishing. I think this is going in my head. I think this person might be a good fit for this book or that book. Is it the time to mention that or not? And I just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
If I get off the call and I didn't make a sales pitch, or what have you, whatever, we'll set up another call at some other point when it's right. And so that's what I do. I want to share, though, also another thing that I do for myself, because Whitney, these boundaries, oh my gosh, the no zone is a really great one to be in, right? That yes zone. I was a yes person for so many years that when I first started to break through the no, to start to say no, I couldn't just say no. I had a really hard time getting there. So what I would say instead, and I know you might not agree with this, but it's what I needed to do at the time was, let me think about that. Just saying, let me think about it was scary for me because I wasn't saying yes. So just to take that was my first step. Let me think about that. And then I'll get back to you tomorrow. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you tomorrow. So
I'm not anti-baby steps. So
I know you're not.
I'm not anti-baby steps. As long as as you think about it overnight, that you don't talk yourself into it, right? If it doesn't serve you is the bottom line. And there's nothing wrong with thinking about it, because maybe your first impression or your first impulse is no, even though you are afraid to say no. Maybe your impulse is no, but when you stop to think about it, maybe there is a way for it to be something that works for you. I actually had that recently. I was invited to collaborate and contribute to a book. And I was like, I had made a decision that I wasn't going to contribute to any more books until I finished my solo book, which has been on the back burner way too long. So I wasn't going to do anymore. And so I said no. Initially I said no. And then I got, someone was persistent. And I was like, you know what, let me think about this, because the topic of the book is so on brand that it made sense to do it, but the timing was such that it didn't work for me. And ultimately what I ended up saying was, if you haven't filled the book by such and such a date, let me know and let's circle back and I'll decide. Well, I ended up being the very last person that joined the book. It just made sense. So there are times when maybe your first impulse is no, and when you think about it, it really is something that's for you. So I'm not anti thinking about it or baby steps or anything, but when you get to a place where you decide this is not for you, it doesn't serve you, it's outside of your vision, your values, your priorities is outside of that, then absolutely find a way to say no, even if you need a little extra time to work yourself into that. And then if you need to send an email, you don't have to talk to them directly, right? You can communicate it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And also, if your first impulse is to say yes, the same thing, right? Because then you can go
Absolutely.
back and evaluate. Because I've had many opportunities that have come up that I've said yes just right out of the gate, and I'm so glad I did. But then there's other things that I've said yes to that I was, I wish I had thought about this a little more. Sometimes I just don't have enough time in the day in order to fulfill the commitment. So then what happens is I put my stuff on the back burner because I'm fulfilling a commitment to other people that's,
Right.
Maybe not going to be in alignment with me. But speaking of that, so Whitney, you and I are working on a book called Action Takers. I don't remember our exact working title right now. Do you remember it off the top of your head?
Yes.
Yes. So here we are. Here Whitney is talking about no is the perfect word, right? But we're working on a book called, Action Takers. Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to go through a year of yes together. It's a journey that we're all going to take together. And it's a year of saying yes, but it's not saying yes to everything. And I think this is the key here. It's really practicing the art of no while saying yes to those things that are in alignment, those things that work, those things that are going to help you to grow, yourself personally and or your business. And so this book, this Year of Yes, is all about like, what's the journey been? What has it been like saying yes to whatever we decide, as a group what we're going to do, and how it's changed our life. And so I want you to touch on that, because here you're talking about no is the perfect word, but we're doing a book about the Year of Yes. So share about that.
So I have here, let me see if I can find it real quick, a quote from Steve Jobs. And it is like absolutely one of my favorite quotes. And I got a couple of Steve Jobs quotes, but you gonna pop up? It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important. And I think that is ultimately the message. It's not, again, about just saying no. It's about what matters to you, why it matters to you. And if you're spending your time and energy on things that don't matter to you, that means you're not spending your time and energy on the things that do matter to you. Your family, growing your business, your relationships, your romantic relationships, or your friendships. If you're not spending your time on those things and you're saying yes to other people, whether it's volunteering or business opportunities that are not moving your life in the direction that you want to live it, ultimately you're going to look back and what will you have done that's in the direction of what's important to you. And so that's the thing that I think is important. And I think it's one of those things that's happening with this, what's called the Great Resignation, right? People are reevaluating their values and their connection to work and why certain things are important. And they're starting to say, no, I don't want to spend a third of my life, doing something for people who don't value what I'm bringing to the table, or I'm no longer interested in doing that. And that's okay, right? We learn, we grow, and we're going to change. Our vision for our life is going to change. My vision when I went to law school is different than the vision that I have for my life today. I'm in a very different place, right? When I started law school, my son was 8. Now my son is not here. I'm remarried. My husband's kids are grown, they're grandchildren. Very different place than I was 20-something years ago, right? So it's okay. We grow. And so our vision's going to change, our values, our priorities are going to change. And along with that, the things we're going to say yes and no to are going to change. And that's fine. Be okay with that. And then live with what you want and need and what serves you here and now and into the future.
Awesome. It's going to just be a great journey, a year of saying yes. And if you want to join us in that, yeah, it's going to be awesome, because we're going to do masterminding where we get together. It's going to be a whole journey. That's what I love about this, project. I love them all, of course, but this one that has a special heart because it's going to be a whole journey with each other, experiencing it and then sharing our stories at the end of it. It's going to be really fascinating. There's something you said about, well, first of all, your 3 Ds. We had distractions, default, and destruction. Yeah. And also there was the question about, I loved how you call it boundary management, and it was honoring your boundaries. So honoring your boundaries. When you set up your boundaries, Whitney, you yourself personally, when you set up those boundaries, how do you make sure that you're honoring them? Do you have them written down, like these are my boundaries? And how do you make sure that you're honoring your own boundaries?
So for me, here are the 3 things that I'm moving towards in my life. It's peace, right? I've identified the things that are of utmost importance. Having peace, a peaceful home, a peaceful relationship with my husband, my relationships in general, highly important to me, my marriage, my friends, my family, and then my spiritual relationship connection I have with higher power. And then being of service to people in the realm of my work. And so if it's going to upset my peace, I am making choices to say no to those things because they're not making my life happier. I spent a lot of time in my life unhappy, in fact, borderline miserable, because I was doing things for other people and in ways that were out of alignment with who I was. And so taking the time to understand who you are is of supreme importance. And I think we don't spend enough time doing that. We're so busy doing, accomplishing, acquiring, that we don't spend enough time being introspective and gaining self-awareness about what's really important is and what you're doing in your business and what you're accomplishing has nothing to do with me and my life. I'm happy for you, right? And I'm happy for Marilyn. I see her face on my screen at the moment, and I'm happy for Monica and the others. It has nothing to do with me. So me chasing other people's dreams in their lives, right? It creates angst in my life. So I need to understand what's most important for me. And once I can do that, then I know what I need to say yes and no to, right? Who I need to have in and out of my life. There are people who I'm sure are very perfectly nice people for others. They don't work well in my life. And that's fine, right? That's fine. And we have to get to a place where we're okay with that. I'm not everybody's flavor. You're not everybody's flavor, right? And that's okay. And so to stop trying to fit round pegs and square holes and jam things together that just don't go, and be okay with that. And know that maybe that's just for now. Maybe there's another point in time where it does work.
I love that. It's like asking yourself this question: who am I? Who am I?
And who do I want to be? Right? Who do I want to be? Who am I becoming? And one of the things I say, I lots of mantras and things that I write all day, every day. But one of them is, who do I need to be to do and have the things that I want? Right? Who do I need to be for that? And it may or may not be the person I am right in this moment. If it requires me to be someone else, am I willing to pay the price to be that person for that thing? And if we spend more time working on who are we and who do we need to be, rather than how can I get this thing, the things that person wants, needs, desires, whatever, will flow in, because you are that person and you attract what you are, right? You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are.
Yeah,
that's not mine. That's not mine. I can't take credit for it, but
that was a hard reality for me when I first heard that. I was like, you mean I'm attracting these people to me? Because that's who I was. So, but Whitney, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I got lots of great notes, and I got comments. I was getting private messages sent over here how great you are, and
thank you.
Oh, and I want to put in the chat here again, we are working on that book, Action Takers. We're experiencing the year of yes, and we're going to share our stories about that. We're even offering 50% off of that book. Now that one has a special price because we're doing a whole journey together. That one's $1,799, but we're offering the 50% off only during this event. So if that's one of the books that you want to join, you got to reach out to me separately, because we have a separate, I send you a separate invoice for that one. But Whitney, I'm excited to do that year
I
with
am
you.
too.
And
I am too.
I
I'm
know.
really looking, I've been thinking about all the things I want to say yes to.
That's right. We expand right through the word yes, but
Absolutely.
sometimes the word yes can crush us too. So we got to be really wise about when we're choosing that word to use it wisely, so that we can, become the person we want to be, the person who we're meant to be as well. Sometimes
And
we
that's the
don't.
most important thing, is just the intentionality. It's the
Yeah.
intentionality, right? Intentionally, yes, intentionally, no, and you'll be fine.
Yes, no maybes.
No maybes.
And only say I'm going to think about it if you're considering it for yourself, that it's going to benefit you. But don't say I'm going to think about it if you already know it's a no. Yeah, don't do that to yourself. That's what I say. Just don't do that to yourself. So Whitney, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
Everybody, just so you know, the chat is going to be available inside all of the videos. So if you go to watch any of the replays, all the chat will be available there as well. There's a lot of great information going on here.